Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. We're here for the podcast today. I'm joined by Alex and Casey. And before we start properly, I just wanted to make reference to what is sort of the cultural elephant in the room. Obviously, everything that's going on at the moment. We're seeing a lot of protests and a lot of unrest around the world. And we just wanted to say, as Stretford Paddock, that we sort of fully support everything that's happening and that we wanted to sort of not shy away from mentioning these things. We don't want it to seem like we're the sort of people who look away and don't sort of speak up when things need to be said. So we wanted to sort of raise that point. We also would like to say as well, there are a lot of ways you can sort of get involved to help if you do want to help with the protests and things that are going on. There are obviously protests in Britain, different things people can attend if you'd like to. There's also ways for people who are younger, maybe don't have money or don't have ways to sort of donate and that kind of thing. There's a video at the moment called Stream to Donate by Zoe Amira, which is a YouTube video that is all the sort of ad revenue from that video will be donated to protesting causes and that sort of thing to help people who are struggling and to help people who need it. So we just want to say that we're not sort of shying away from things. We discussed what we would do about content and putting things out today, and we thought the best way to deal with things would be to sort of go ahead with our usual schedule, but give reference to and sort of try to help and do what we can rather than to sort of shy away from things and not mention things or to sort of abstain from making any content altogether. We thought the best way to deal with things would be to sort of put things out the way we can and to get the message across in the sort of best way we can, really. So I thought we should address that at the front of the video, you know, without sort of trying to hide it or put it in the middle of the video or anything like that. Get things out at the start and just let people know where we stand. So Casey and Alex, how are you doing today, lads?
Yeah, not bad. Fully agree with everything you said. It's been a bit of a weird day with everyone, you know, and a bit of a weird time with everything going on. And like you said, we were discussing whether or not to do videos and stuff. We felt like we should continue on doing what we're doing, putting these videos out. But like you said, there's so many ways to get involved and stuff. And whether you're watching that video, whatever you're doing on socials, it's definitely the right thing to be getting done.
How are you, Casey? All right, mate?
Yeah, good. It was well said, that, Joe. Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you. We're going to be talking today a little bit about football coming back. Obviously, we're looking forward to things going on. Igalo's signed now. We've got a different perspective on things, a different squad, a different look. We've got this sort of Fernandes Pogba kind of, you know, relationship that we're all expecting to be some sort of footballing bromance. And I thought the best way to deal with things, the best way to look at what's coming on and what we can expect going forward was to all come up with our ideal starting 11s for the rest of the season and sort of address how people are going to play together, what we can expect, any sort of changes in tactics that we may see, any kind of, do you think there'll be more injuries? Do you think we'll see this player feature more often? Do we think, you know, different players will get games where they wouldn't have done before? Because obviously we've got so many games in such a short period of time. It's a completely unique sort of footballing experience that we're about to embark on over the next sort of 8 weeks. So I reckon we should all go through and sort of announce our starting 11s, and then we will kind of dissect those. And as we get to each sort of category, the centre-backs, the full-backs, the centre-mid, the attacking line, we'll kind of have a conversation about each of those sections and then the tactics generally to sort of have a think and a prediction of what we're going to be seeing go forward. So I reckon, Alex, you can go first. Give us your starting 11, boy. And we'll compare with each other as we go along.
My starting 11. So I'm kind of been a little bit torn with only a couple of positions. I think there's a lot of, if we got everyone fit, which it sounds like everyone is now, I think everyone said Rashford's back, Pogba's back. For me, I think goalkeepers, David De Gea, no problems whatsoever. That's easy. I think the back four sticks to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Lindelof and Maguire stick together. I think there's obviously an argument for Bayer to try and force his way in there, but I think that you'd stick with them. I think it's, I think they've formed a pretty good partnership, and I've gone for Williams at left back because I think that, you know, fitness is going to be a big thing coming back, and I think Luke Shaw obviously has had issues with injuries and things like that, and I think Williams is probably going to play more of the game just because of his fitness. Then on midfield. This is where I've got my problems. This is where I kind of struggle a little bit. I've gone with, I think you have to have Bruno and Pogba in the same team. I think whilst we're doing it, because they are obviously our two of our best players, if not our two best players. So if we're going for 4-3-3, I think Matic behind them probably the best job, and then a front three of Dan James, Tony Marshall, and Marcus Rashford. I'll let you do the other team to see how close you get to what I would do if I kind of my plan B. So I'll let you get that out first because I've got a plan B as well for.
Woo, posh, big
very
man with
posh,
his backup systems.
Backup systems, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, right. It's a strong squad, and it's roughly it's very. I think they're going to be quite similar, these, aren't they? But there are a few differences to what I've got in my squad. Casey, do you want to go next, mate?
Okay. There was two ways I could have approached this. I'll go with my first, and then obviously I feel like the tactical difference is what Alex is going to have similar to me. So
have you both got backup squads?
I know.
Just well ahead.
You've got to change the tactics to fit the
I said
opponent,
predicted
Joe.
11, not predicted 22s, optional 11s, second teams, five-a-sides. Go
on. So in there, obviously David De Gea. I don't think there's any debate there.
We can all agree on that.
One. We can all agree on that. Right back, Wan-Bissaka. Can all agree on that, I'm guessing. Centre backs, I think this is where my first change will come with Eric Bailly next to Maguire. I feel like they complement each other a lot better. I feel like Lindelof and Maguire are much the same centre back, whereas like when you had your Ferdinand and your Vidic, you had your composed passing centre back in Ferdinand, you had your hothead in Vidic. I feel like Maguire composed, Bailey absolutely not. Left back, this is I was going to say Shaw because I feel like Shaw's bringing himself back and it depends on his fitness. That's more where I'm not sure, but Williams or Shaw, it's kind of interchangeable. I'm not really offended if you go against me on that. CDM, I think McTominay. I feel like he's got the mobility. I feel like he's got his defensive numbers been good this season. Pogba-Fernandes was a given. I feel like if they're both fit, and then front three of Martial through the middle, Rashford on the left, and Mason Greenwood on the right.
So there's a bit of difference there. Greenwood instead of James. We're seeing Bailly instead of Lindelof. We're seeing McTominay instead of Matic. So mine's sort of down the middle of yours two, really. So I've gone De Gea. We don't even need to talk about De Gea, do we? There's no discussion needed to be had. Obviously Romero's good, but I think he knows his place. That was a bit like
I thought we were going to start
old-fashioned husband chat, wasn't it?
Was it Nathan Bishop who signed in January?
Yeah. He's going to start. And then Wan-Bissaka, of course, arguably our best player this season. I think Maguire. I personally think I would go Maguire and Lindelof just because the sort of continuity throughout the season. It's a kind of a partnership that is understood at this point. And I think when you're coming back from a long time off, I think those link-ups and those knowing each other's traits and tendencies is something that is very important or will prove to be very important when we're trying to hit the ground running after not playing football for 3 months. Although, admittedly, Eric Bailly does most games he plays are having not played football for 3 months because they're usually coming back from injury and he seems to hit the ground running pretty well. But I think, especially as a centre-back pairing, after such a long time off, seeing just the two that have just gelled together, even if it's not the perfect partnership, even if, a year of Bailly and Maguire together would be better than a year of Lindelof and Maguire, I think just because we've seen it, I'm going to have to go for that. And then I would stick with Luke Shaw as well at left back, although he has looked a bit of a chunky monkey in some of those training pictures, hasn't he?
He does, yeah.
We can all agree on that. But I
don't think he's been doing McTominay's training regime.
Yeah. He always looks like a sort of double-decker in a vest, but in a good way. But I think it's one of them where he's just got that sort of body type where even when he's fit and he's got low body fat and all that, he's just got a thicker set, hasn't he? So I wouldn't necessarily read too much into that. In midfield, it's so hard. This is the real sort of boiling pot for me. I don't think it'll be McTominay, although we'll get to that in a minute. We'll go through these and get to that. I personally think it will be Fred, Fernandes and Pogba. I think that's a really mobile, sort of high intensity, really good pressing midfield. And I think Fred's cut out a lot of the mistakes in his game. But again, we'll go through this all in a minute. And then I agree with Casey. I'm seeing Greenwood, I'm seeing Martial, and I'm seeing, of course, Marcus Rashford, assuming he's fit. So all different squads there, all different teams.
Yeah,
should we go through Alex's first and pick it apart?
Well, can I go for my plan B then before you pick it?
Okay, yeah, go on then.
So
plan B.
So I've seen that there's a clip as well of Rashford training, receiving and shooting from the right hand side. So I've got a feeling they're going to try maybe the two up front with Martial and Rashford. And I think that maybe links into, because I like the reason I have Matic in there, because I think you need someone that is definitely someone that's going to sit and hold. And I don't think Fred and McTominay quite do that. But what I could see happening is maybe a midfield diamond of McTominay, Fred, Bruno, and Pogba behind the two, which I think might be something that goes with instead of having Matic in there. So I quite like to see that. Yeah, and I think that's probably going to be the way to go. Maybe not against Spurs, but definitely against a team like maybe Leicester, who are going to who have a very strong midfield and they're going to pack it in there, pack the midfield. I think that would work really well. And I think that you saw last year they kind of did the split strikers quite well with Martial and Rashford. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see how that kind of goes.
There's something very deeply, deeply exciting about having all four of them on the same pitch, and it's got to be doing that like Pumba walk from Lion King. They're walking away.
Yeah. And I think that's what they kind of have to do now. I think that's what Ollie did very well when he first came in. Was he got probably our 4 or 3 best attacking players on the pitch at the same time.
Yeah.
Which was. And that was, I know, and people are going to slag him off, but that's why they had Lingard in there to sort of do that the work rate to allow them to do a bit more. So it depends where that's going to come from. That's why I kind of maybe hint to Dan James on the right-hand side, just for the defensive output, just for the pressing from the front, to give a little bit more protection in that way. But I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a great problem to have that we've got all these quality players now compared to the start of the season when it felt like we had no midfield whatsoever. So
it's mad, isn't it? The midfield literally was, and we were all pretty much saying it, sort of relegation candidate level midfield. You had a sort of Matic in his wheelchair, and you had Pereira and Lingard, who both of them looked like they were still in bed half the time when they were playing. And then all of a sudden, it's like Matic is not quite, but almost as good as he was at Chelsea. Not really, but he's right back to being the player we thought he would be at this point in his career, rather than someone that just fell off a cliff. And then you've got Fernandes, who's obviously changed the system in the midfield and changed the outlets and creativity we've got in midfield, and an increasingly dependable Fred, who's been excellent this season, and McTominay, who's just carried on this unlikely trajectory coming out of the reserves, where no one thought he would be this player. 2 years ago, the word about Scott McTominay wasn't he'll be one of the best players in the squad, or he'll be this sort of commanding 6'4" central midfielder who's got the body of a god. And they've just
all sort of word about Scott McTominay 2 years ago.
Not really. Not really. So it's remarkable, really. And now all of a sudden we're looking at what I would say is one of, and I'll say it in a way that we don't have to dwell on it and we don't have to be part of the conversation. One of the better midfields in the league, I think, at this point. If you've got McTominay, Fred, Matic, Pogba, and Fernandes all fit, I would say that's right up there with, not quite as good as Man City, but I think you could argue that it's a similar quality to anyone else in the league. And it's amazing that we've turned around like that. What's in midfield then? You've gone for McTominay, Casey.
Yeah.
What was behind you thinking there? Because obviously Matic is probably the most out-and-out defensive player. Fred has been, let's not forget, the most ever present in the midfield this season, with McTominay's injuries and Matic sort of returning to form toward the sort of second half of what has been the season so far. Was it easy for you to drop Fred, or do you think that he's sort of not quite right for that position?
I feel like with McTominay, you kind of get the nice middle ground between the two. Because I was saying, like, Matic obviously is the more defensive and the out defensive, and Fred's got the mobility over Matic. But I say McTominay is kind of in the middle ground, that he's got the defensive numbers that you'd expect from someone you want, or you expect from Matic so many years ago. I mean, I think his defensive numbers, I should have probably looked them up before this, and I've said it before, but they're good numbers anyway. And he's quite a high output. He doesn't get dribbled past a lot. And then McTominay seems to have a bit more of a level headedness about him. Like, because we said Fred's cut out some of the mistakes of his game, but he still bombs forward and bombs around the pitch. He has apps. Like, his positional sense sometimes is a bit questionable, especially when he's just like nipping at someone's heels. And I feel like if we're playing Pogba and Fernandes high, having someone who's trying to go after everyone's just going to leave a couple of gaps. So I'm not knocking. I feel like Fred's sort of that player that you could bring on for one of Pogba and Fernandes later on. or you could swap out if you wanted to rest them, like in a game, like you said, we have a big Europa League fixture midweek, or we have the FA Cup's probably still going on or something like that. We're against one of the top sides. We'll drop one and Pogba or Fernandes out. We'll put Fred in for this game, and I think they do a job there. I feel like that's a good thing. That people forget that Fred's very creative as well when he's given the chance to go forward. So I feel like McTominay is a good middle ground if we're playing both Pogba and Fernandes between Matic and Fred.
Talking about that then, and we'll come back to the sort of the details of that. First of all, get your formations and your teams in the comments, and we'll bring some of them up and sort of have a discussion about them as we go along. So if you've got a starting 11, put it in the comments and we'll bring it in. Is there an argument to be made that you maybe don't play Pogba and Bruno together straight away to start with? You maybe play one of them or the other one until we've kind of found who works best in and amongst that situation. Do you think maybe you would start Bruno, McTominay and Fred, and then you bring Pogba in off the bench, or vice versa? Do you think there's an argument to be made for that?
I think there is, yeah. I mean, the wildcard option is, and this is maybe not what everyone's been thinking of, but at Sporting, Fernandes has also played on the right-hand side of midfield. So if you really wanted to get them all in the team, put Fernandes a bit further forward on the right-hand side. You have that creativity off the side, crossing the ball in, getting the ball across to Martial and Rashford.
Well, that's where I think maybe the diamond would fit in there a little bit, where kind of he's the right-hand side of a diamond, or a Fred maybe on the left, but your width is still going to come from Rashford and Martial, who both like to drift on that side. And that would potentially, I think it's going to be a lot more fluid. And I think, like you said, Joe, I think the one thing is that I think in the games we need to break down a team, we need to get as many players on as possible. You need to have all them players, good players as possible. But I think the one thing that, City have kind of proved is sometimes you look at their team sheets and go, hang on a minute, they're not playing De Bruyne today. They're playing it, But the best thing is because they can alternate it, because they aren't just relying on one player, which we kind of were at the start of the season, especially in midfield. Whereas now you've got Bruno and Pogba, and you can rest one, you can drop them out of a system to do something else. If you need to be more defensive, you've got the defensive workers in there that you can kind of do. You can drop in players, you can do that, which I think we've not had for a while. I still think we'd probably do another one in there, maybe someone, which is I quite like the Grealish one, where he can maybe fit into the front three as well as fitting into a midfield three as well. It makes a massive difference where you've got, you look at how many times your City have rested Bernardo Silva, and you kind of go, how have they managed to do that? And you because they've got De Bruyne and David Silva in there as well, and they've got other players, and they've got Gundogan that can do a job in there as well, and they've got a lot of really good players, and I think that's what we're getting towards now. We're getting better at that. So I think it's going to be a lot of dependent on what system we're playing against. I think, especially like I said, I think in the teams where we need to break teams down, I think that you'll see more of Pogba and Bruno with maybe we've forgotten Juan Mata as well. He could potentially go in there in the number 10 role with them two behind. And now you've got that creative. Now you've got three unbelievably creative players behind your front two or whatever it is. And I think that'll definitely be an option. And it maybe takes it allows a Pereira to come in. I don't think he's great, but it allows a Pereira to come in and just be a bit daft in a couple of games, because you are relying on him to do things. Yes,
exactly. Because we saw, was it LASK where he scored a goal and he looked pretty good against him, wasn't it? Was it LASK? Yeah. You play him in those games where with a better team, or and he's maybe the sort of the what would you say, the sort of the least quality piece in the puzzle. But if he's in a decent puzzle, you can play players like that. You can get Mata in there. You can get Lingard in. Back to Lingard and the players like Lingard and Pereira being role players that come on for specific games when you need a high intensity press. When you need this, you need specific things.
And you need someone to boot Raheem Sterling in the last minute, like he did.
Yeah, exactly. rather than having to play him week in, week out against all types of players and teams and systems, and trying to get, Andreas Pereira and Jesse Lingard to break down some of the deepest line defences in the country, they're not going to look good at doing that. But if you play them, and it sounds silly, away at Liverpool, or, one of these games where it's a lot of running, it's a lot of pressing, it's a lot of positioning and keeping that high intensity, keeping your focus, keeping your concentration. Jesse Lingard's brilliant at that. Never stops running, does a job for you, and he can get out of a tight situation here and there. And if he's passing it to Bruno and to Pogba and to Dan James and to Rashford and to Martial, he'll look good in that system rather than you have to play him 30 games a year because we've got no one else. Let's get a couple of these teams and we'll have a few discussions about these. Oliver Edwards here, similar to ones we've been looking at. De Gea, Wan-Bissaka, the change there, Axel and Maguire. Do we think that there's much chance of that, given that he's not played at all this season?
I don't know. It's an odd one with Axel. He had that little stretch of games. I think he had a hand injury, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if he's in the squad the first week. I think there's a possibility, but I think Bailly's definitely ahead of him, as he's shown, just because he played a couple of games before the league got suspended. So I think he is probably fourth on that list right now. I'm not saying he's fourth on quality on that list. I just think that he's probably fourth in Ollie's mindset right now. So.
Good point here from Daniel. He's saying, for me, Spurs, it's 4-3-3. De Gea, Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Lindelof, Williams, McTominay, Bruno, Pogba, James, Martial, Rashford. McTominay needs to play big games. He thrives. And I think we've seen that from him in recent years, in recent months, that he does seem to have this thing where he has this mentality that he likes to put this pressure on his shoulders. He likes to have this playing for the badge. He likes to put a lot of emotion and sort of he enjoys that pressure. Do you think, Casey, that maybe for the big games you play certain players and for other games you play other players?
I feel like for the big games you definitely need to. See, it seems like a weird thing to say, but I feel like for big games, Bruno Fernandes and Pogba probably shouldn't play together. I feel like having that Fred McTominay pivot has worked very well for us in all the big games so far. In sort of the sense of both of them work hard for the team and they're good defensively and they're good at getting the ball forward. So I'd say, you take a knock in creativity, but then you also shore up the midfield, especially against, obviously, Spurs. You're looking at a decent quality midfield and obviously a lot of pace and a lot of interplay. So I don't know. It's a sort of thing, if you've got to look at each lineup and you've got to say, okay, what do I need to combat? And I feel like, I would say that Pogba and Fernandes can easily play in the games like, playing a lower side team who aren't really going to press the ball. Having those two players to break them down with passes over the top, passes through the defence is great. But against someone like Spurs, I definitely think you need those willing runners. You need those people who put the energy in and put the passing in and get the defensive work in the midfield.
A couple of things I want to bring up, actually. One, to get your opinion on what Casey said before. What do you think of Fernandes playing out on the right-hand side, maybe, to make up some more space in the midfield for a bit more of a robust kind of midfield? Do you think that'd be a good idea, Alex? I
think it kind of wastes it. I mean, I could potentially see him or Pogba. I think him, because he does like to drift over to the right-hand side, being the one that would kind of do that. But maybe just in a free roll kind of thing. And that's why I kind of, when I went for the Diamond or the 4-2-2-2, that's why I kind of think, like you said, the Fred and McTominay pivot holding, or maybe McTominay holding with Fred slightly more further ahead, or whatever it is, just allows them to be free and allows them to pick up the ball wherever. And again, it's all going to depend on how the teams are going to be. And there's a couple of people mentioning in the comments about Pogba, why put him back into the system and why fix something that wasn't broken before we finished. And I think for as much as we wish that we're just going to come back flying in exactly the same way, there's been too much of a break. That momentum will have gone a bit. Obviously, there's a much better feel about the club, and I think that will continue as long as the results continue, and as long as the performances continue, and we keep injury free kind of thing. But I do think it is a little bit of a start of the season, and I still think you need to get your best players on there, and I think Pogba is one of them. So I'd definitely get them together. Definitely get them on there. Whether there is a fitness issue with him straight away coming back in, because he hasn't played any 90-minute games for a while, he could maybe sit out for a little bit. But
do you think there's maybe actually it might be work in the benefit and in the favour of these injured players, because they're coming back cold, obviously, because they've been out, but so is everyone. At a certain point, you're just cold, aren't you? 3 months off or 2.5 months off, what it'll be. I think everyone's just, it's like no one's played for a year.
But going back to what Case said before, about the better teams, we have beat these better teams this season by outrunning them. We have, that's what we've done. That's kind of what, and that's why we've competed against Liverpool, even though we only got the point against them. The reason we've had a game against them is because we've outrun them. We still lack quality a little bit on the right-hand side. But we've definitely this season just gone, you know what, we can outrun teams and we can be first to every ball, and that's what we've kind of done so far. So there may be a bit of that. There may be a bit of, do you know what, maybe Pogba doesn't play, and maybe Fred and McTominay put the legs in there. That's why I've also mentioned Dan James, because I think he does that job very well. Yeah. And again, like we've mentioned, I wouldn't count out Lingard because, you know, especially for that Spurs game coming back, he played the home game and had an extremely good game in that.
That was probably the last really great game he's had, I would say.
The Spurs and the City game, you kind of saw what Lingard was good at. So I wouldn't count him out because, you know, with the training that they've been doing, he may get back into it because, you know, people forget that he kind of created that first goal for Rashford. He didn't get cast with an assist, but it was his pressing very high up, which meant that I think it was Sanchez or Aurier that gave away the ball, and then we score. You know, that's what it's all about. You know, and that's what he brings to the team. So he could potentially come back in there, whether it be on the right hand side or in the kind of hole behind the striker to allow the press. So, you know, it's options. It's great to have options. You know, it is really good at the minute.
Speaking of options, I'll ask you this first, Casey. One thing that no one's mentioned yet, and I'm surprised we haven't seen this mentioned, is playing Paul Pogba as one of the two deeper men. He's played there for France. He can play that deep line role. Something to remember with both him and Bruno, obviously they're both better going forward, but they're both physically very capable. They both have a defensive kind of skill to them. They're not, you know, it's not like, who would you even say, Mesut Ozil or someone like that, where they can only go forward and they're very weak and sort of not lazy, but, you know, they're not tracking back. Get Paul Pogba in at number 6 alongside the likes of Matic or Fred or McTominay, whoever you want to say. And then you could have Bruno slightly further forward and Pogba's got that great passing range. Do you think we might see him there, Casey?
Yeah. When his defensive numbers when he played, I can't remember how many games it was at the start of the season, maybe 6-7 games at the start of the season, were pretty good. Like he was putting the tackles in. He looked like it wasn't like the Pogba of last season where you were saying, oh, he's not really putting the work in going back. He's kind of just waiting for the ball and then going to do his job going forward. So I feel like he could play there. I mean, in that sort of sense, it's whether you want to rely on. Do you want to take again? It's what you said with Lindelof and Maguire. It's like, do you want to take away from what works? What we know it works is McTominay and Fred, and occasionally Fred and Matic has worked this season. Yeah. So it's whether if you can play him, and then obviously if it works, then it works. And I would say he's a top quality player. That's a given. So it should work. But it's whether you want to compromise on that, really. Yeah, because especially after the weird gap he's had, the injuries he's had, the sort of like the way the team's changed, especially. But again, being a top quality player, you'd expect him to just fit in.
That's a good question, actually, Alex. What do you reckon? Do you know? There's some people are in the school of thought that pick your best players and they will do the best job for you, and other people are more of the kind of matchups win ties and tactics win ties. So you need someone who's an out-and-out number 6 to tackle, and then you need 2 number 8s who are more attacking. Do you think that there's maybe just a case that Paul Pogba is better than Fred at everything, or that Paul Pogba is better than McTominay at everything? He doesn't have to tackle as much because it's not what he's best at. But if you play him at 6, maybe he's just better than everyone else. He's physically as capable as anyone I've ever seen. He's 6'4", he's as fast as any of them lot. He's great on the ball. He can get his body in the way. Do you think that we might just see Matic and Pogba and Fernandes and whoever else is just a much better midfield than anything else we can put forward? Look at City. There are games where they play Rodri, or in seasons gone by,
and then just say, you 5, go for it.
And then you've got David Silva playing on the wing, but he's not a winger. He can't run, but it doesn't matter because they've got so much movement. They've got so much creativity, so much to pass to, so much going on, that just pick all your best players and they will win the most games.
I think it's interesting to see where Ollie kind of sees where we're at. I think that'll kind of make the decision for us. I think if he thinks that, because I think that what Ollie did very well this season and what Mourinho did well all the way through in times was that he recognised when there was a better team playing against us and didn't try and outpass them and didn't try and outplay them. I think he's done well at that. Obviously, people say we can only counter-attack and things like that, and it's whether Ollie kind of sees that, do you know what, I trust this front 4 of Rashford, Martial, Pogba and Bruno just to beat teams, just to play football and beat them. And whether that's adding Greenwood in there, that's adding Dan James in there, that's the question. Or whether it's still a bit of, do you know what? Maybe we can't fully do that. Maybe we've not quite got the balance on the right-hand side sorted yet. And maybe we do need to kind of stick to the philosophy that have ran us well in the games where against City, we've sat back and killed them on the counter-attack. Against Tottenham, we've pressed them high and used the counter-attack. So maybe there's a bit of both. I've just seen Stu in there saying Pogba in the defensive had Matuidi and Kante. And that is a big point to have, that the players around him kind of do that. And it's whether you have to maybe add a player in. That's why I kind of go for Matic when you're having the three and you want Pogba and Bruno. I think that because he is the best at just being the anchor point and did very well when last season we had Herrera in there with Pogba. I think that worked really well. So it all depends on where Ollie kind of sees us at. I think against the lower down teams, I definitely think he can go and do it now. I definitely think against anyone lower than, anything outside that top six, that we can just go and do that now. I think that teams are going to be more wary of, they can't just close us down in one position. Before they said, you can cut off our left-hand side and United will struggle. Whereas I don't think you can do that anymore. I think that with Bruno popping up elsewhere, with Pogba popping up as well, I think that we've got the option to do that. Now, against the teams, obviously we've not got to play City again, but we've got to still play Tottenham, a very good team. I think we've got to play Wolves away again. Teams that are very defensively sound and I've got some very good players in there. I think maybe that's going to kind of see where Ollie sees where that team's at. And that'll probably show where he wants to strengthen as well. Because if in those games he kind of goes, do you know what? I'm going to sit back. I'm not going to put Pogba and Bruno on there because I want someone else more defensive. That'll be big to see. Or whether he goes with the diamond in midfield to accommodate them. That's going to be the interesting thing, what he does against the teams that are probably around us, the teams that are going to try and match us and play against us. But I think, no, that front four now against most of the league should just be able to go out and play and beat him. There shouldn't be a question of anything else.
And also, I think it'll be nice to see as well, because Pogba, we're all hoping, he comes back from this injury and just plays and is fit for the rest of the season. But there's a decent chance that he'll need, Rashford is one thing. He's got a very specific, unusual, you could say, injury with the spine injury, and that has to be monitored and dealt with properly. And I don't really have even any experience of hearing how those injuries are dealt with. So we assume that that's going to be dealt with. But Pogba has got this ankle injury, and ankles are notoriously repetitive and they come back and they're never quite the same. And there's a decent chance that Pogba won't be able to play every game. So we're going to see a lot of variations. We're going to see this is almost, and I say dry run with the complete understanding that this is the season and we need to finish fourth and all that sort of stuff. But if you think of it as a sort of a preparation for next season, these are sort of very high intensity pre-season matches almost that just happen to be the same chance and fighting for top four, where we've got the likelihood of new players coming in. We've got a chance to sort of find out exactly what we need from this team, whether we need a defensive midfielder, whether we need a Grealish type, who's going to go where, who's going to do what. And I think we're probably going to see 4 or 5 different rotations of this midfield. It's interesting to see in training, and I know that we dwell on certain matchups and that sort of thing in training. But it did seem as though Pogba and Bruno have been put together a lot in training, and you hear of Matic being part of those teams as well. So I wonder if that is any suggestion of how we might do things so far. It's amazing how Matic has turned this around in the last couple of months, isn't it? From what seemed to just be a finished player at not wanting to play, his career was done. All of a sudden, he's arguably the best option to go behind those two players in our best side. It's quite amazing, really. Right, should we have a look at some forwards then? Because the midfield is one that it's a Rubik's cube that doesn't have all the colours on it. It's like, some of them are missing. That block's gone. That one's fallen off. The corners fell off. So we'll never get to the bottom of that. The front three, Igalo has just signed a new deal, taking him to January 2021 or the end of January 2021. So essentially up to the start of February. Martial, of course, has been our number one striker this season. Rashford, will he be fit? Won't he be fit? You two have both gone for different wingers on that right-hand side as your option. I'll let you go first, Casey. Give your sort of claim for Mason Greenwood over Dan James on that side.
Well, see, Dan James was never bought. When it started, we always took under the assumption that Dan James was never bought to start. Dan James was never bought to be that player who starts every game, who is the player that we rely on the right wing. Things came about. that ended up happening. And I feel like in the games, the way that we're playing now, I feel like if we're going to have someone like Pogba, Fernandes, all that sort of thing behind that we just discussed in the midfield, having someone who can get on the end of the chances and you can be like, yeah, especially in those smaller games where it's like we're going to probably get maybe 2-3 chances. They're going to limit us as much as possible. Having someone who you can be like, he'll get it on his right, he'll get it on his left, and he'll bang it in from absolutely anywhere is really a necessity. So, and I think Mason's proved that throughout the entire season, that he's been that sort of man that you can put him on. Like even you can put him on the pitch, and he won't do anything, and then he'll just pop up and score.
Score a goal.
Yeah. So I think having that option on the right side is perfect, especially in this sort of thing where we're not sure how the season is going to run. I don't think Mason's going to have lost his finishing ability because of the gap.
No, it looked like he turned Lindelof quite nicely in training yesterday, didn't he? Yeah. Did you see that? Right, you saw that video. I guess we all saw that, didn't we?
Yeah.
The amount of people who were like, bloody hell, Lindelof getting bodied by an 18-year-old. First of all, it's in training, so it's all at 60% at most.
He's not going to snap him.
Secondly, he's not going to snap him. And thirdly, Mason Greenwood was one of the most promising strikers in the world. It's not like it was me that turned Lindelof. Joe Smith from Stretford Paddock put Lindelof on his arse.
It was kind of a bad touch from Lindelof, and he's kind of nicked it off him and just turned him and does what Mason Greenwood does, which is slot out.
Yeah, and even if Greenwood went past him, dripped him one way, did him the other way, broke his ankles, he's fallen on the floor crying, and Greenwood puts it in. That's training.
What Greenwood does.
Yeah, and he's training, and that's why we think Greenwood's so good.
Yeah.
God, any excuse to bash Lindelof in it. Sorry, that's beside the point. Alex, what I want to hear from you, do we think that that point made by Casey there, that Greenwood is the best player to play alongside Pogba and Fernandes? Now we've got people who can find our attacking three. He's the best finisher.
I definitely think there's a case for that. I definitely think there's a case for Greenwood going on that right-hand side and doing the job. All going to depend on where everyone's fitness levels are at and things like that. I think that the reason I went with Dan James is because I want to see Pogba and Bruno midfield, and I think that just another defensive output, someone else that's going to do that work rate, someone that's going to really shore us up in pressing from the front kind of thing. Not saying Mason doesn't do that, but I think Dan James is one of the best at doing that.
Yeah,
I think he kind of fits there very well, and in the same way that Greenwood will create chances, I think having Dan James on any pitch with the pace he's got and having those two who can both pick a pass out, he can always be on the half term looking to get in behind and things like that. I think, I think he's still a very good option. I think his finishing has been a little bit underrated this season. I think he scored some cracking goals this season, Dan James, and I think that he did get a bit burnt out, and I think that's kind of where the slope kind of went with him. But again, it's a good thing to kind of have options there. I want to see Mason play a bit more. I'm unsure how much he'll get to play now, and I think we'll go on to Ighalo. But I think Ighalo will start a lot of games as well. I think that, like you mentioned with Rashford, I think that the back injury is a strange one, and it's one that they still have to be very, very careful of. Whilst this break has kind of given them time to do it, when it first happened, I think there was a very big question that whether Marcus Rashford was going to be fit for the Euros, which would have been a month later down the line. So never mind him coming back now. So whilst he's fit and he's training and stuff, he may still need to be rotated. And whether that's a case of Dan James playing on the left instead of Rashford, whether that's in some games Martial moving over to the left and Ighalo starting, I think there's definitely a possibility that Marcus Rashford doesn't play every single game towards the end of this season, to make sure that, because it was one of those injuries that kind of got said this could be a career-ending or career-hampering injury. It isn't just one that's just you can run it off kind of thing. And once you've done the rehab, you find you're back in. I think he's definitely going to need some time. So we'll see how that goes. And I think Ighalo will definitely do a job especially against the teams that he's going to need to. He can use a bit of physicality against as well. It's one of the options that we have now, is that we've got someone that can head the ball, someone that can score goals from the scrappier goals. And we've now got players like Bruno, Pogba that can put a decent ball in as well. And that's one thing we've kind of been missing as well. And that's where Ighalo might thrive as much as these other front three are going to thrive on slip passes through. Ighalo can thrive on people that can actually cross the ball and pick players out which you saw in the game straight away when Ighalo come in, him just picking off those chances and stuff. So we'll see how that kind of goes.
I was going to mention that about the Dan James Greenwood sort of argument, or whatever it may be. We're thinking about the midfielders finding Dan James or finding Greenwood, and who would you rather have been sort of played through on goal? Obviously, it would be Greenwood. But let's not forget that Dan James has made the most assists for United this season with, I think, 7. He may well be setting up Pogba and Bruno. It's not just them setting him up. They both want 10 goals a season each. They both want, there's a lot of goals to be had from people laying off to Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba. So having Dan James in there is a good crosser of a ball. He's the fastest player we've got, other than possibly Marcus Rashford. So I think if you've got players who are tired, you've got teams who are coming back who aren't quite up to speed, and you've got a well-rested Dan James who's just essentially a bullet in a pair of shorts, there's a good chance that he may catch some teams out. And you've got Pogba and Fernandes coming to the edge of the box, or we saw against City a couple of seasons ago, Pogba's ability in the air. We've seen Bruno Fernandes, his sort of penalty-taking ability and tricky feet, and the creativity of Dan James, I think, could well find the likes of Bruno and Fernandes to set them up for goals rather than it just being the other way around. On to Ighalo, we heard you talk a bit about there, Alex. Yeah. Casey, I'd like to get your opinion on with the likes of Bruno and Pogba and that creativity like we keep talking about, as we're obviously very excited to see. Do you think that he's an even better option now than he seemed in January when we got him? Do you think that there was a decent chunk of fans and of pundits and stuff that thought we may never see Pogba and Bruno play together, just because it looked like Pogba was out the door. His injuries may well have taken him up to the end of the season, had things not gone the way they have. Now we're definitely going to be seeing at least sort of 10 games or so, potentially up to 18 games of Pogba and Bruno both available for selection. Do you think that this team and this creativity, and we saw how Pogba found Zlatan Ibrahimovic time and time again, great runs off the back line, finding a bit of space in the box, something that Ighalo's so good at. Do you think that signing and the extension of his loan could be a massive part of any success United have this season?
Yeah. Firstly, I was going to say just quickly on the point of Dan James. Dan James looked like he needed a rest since about September. So I feel like this 3-month period is going to done him.
Well, Daniel in the comments said James has had his rest. He could be reborn after this break. I feel like he was just too much and burnt out. He's nearly played as many games for United as he did for Swansea. So I think echoing your point there, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. Carry on.
But back to Ighalo. I feel like, especially if we're going to go with the system that's 5 subs, I feel like that's been used in the Bundesliga. I don't know if that's been confirmed for the Prem. So if we have the 5 subs, then obviously you're going to get more chances, especially with Rashford. I feel like Rashford will get subbed off every game. Yeah. I feel like it depends. If we're going to change it, I feel like Dan James might get subbed off if he needs more of a rest. Like, you've got options now with your subs. So I feel like Ighalo will definitely feature more. And like you said, having someone who has that good hold-up play and is good in the air and is a bit of a different option, we'll probably definitely see him a lot more. I think we'll definitely see him in cup games, and we'll definitely see him in the Europa like we were seeing him anyway. But I feel like, the 5 subs and the sort of the fitness and everything will play a lot. And I feel like there'll be a lot of rotation. And it's really hard to predict who's going to start, who's going to come on, and when they're going to come on, and all that sort of thing.
I think the point you made about Rashford and probably Pogba, I doubt we'll see many 90-minute games for either of them, certainly for the first few weeks, just because they're both coming off long-term injuries. And Rashford, as much as he should be back being fit, from what we sort of heard and rumours that we kind of heard, he was only back in proper training, like I don't mean proper training as in training with everyone, contact training, obviously. I mean, he was only ready to resume kind of football-based training about 2 or 3 weeks ago, wasn't he? So he's not been sat around for months. He's almost, when the start of the season starts, will almost be what his sort of ideal trajectory to returning is. He's not been sat fit for 2 months. He's just coming back as the football comes back. So I think Pogba's the opposite, where he's been fit for basically 2 months now, or a month at least now.
He was very close to coming back when the break happened. He was very close. And
whereas I think if United had a game today, Marcus Rashford would be iffy to start still with his comeback from injury. So I think we've got 2 more weeks and he should be just about right. But he's not been sat around fully fit for months. So I think we'll definitely see Marcus Rashford playing probably 60, 70 minutes in most games. Has there been any word about the 5 subs thing? Where are we up to with that?
I've not, but if it's happening in Germany, then I don't see any reason why it won't happen here. I think it seems probably right with all the break and everything like that, and to because we're going to try and cram these games in as quick as we possibly can. I think they do need to try and protect players from injury and stuff like that.
That schedule is mad.
The schedule is mad for what it's going to be.
Oh, how exciting is it though? If you just put the sort of moral side of things out to one side.
Yeah, we've all had our say on that and said that it's there's a lot of issues. What I was getting back starting again, but as it looks like everything kind of reopens again, it is good to see it. And on a purely football perspective and nothing else, getting it back is great. It's been great to see the Bundesliga in the small time it's been. And like I said, the idea of having these players that we haven't really had fully fit all season actually be fit is going to be good to see. And hopefully we push on. Hopefully we kick on.
And I think one thing it has drawn attention to in these rounds of testing that we've seen, obviously the Premier League aren't taking tests from the NHS or anything like that. That's clear that it's a separate sort of pool of resources that they're using. But again, it's highlighted the lack of tests for the rest of the public, because we've seen this is the first. So it's been 3 rounds of testing, and this 3rd round is the first time we've seen people that everyone has tested negative. But this is the first 2 rounds alerted us to people who didn't know they were positive, who could have potentially been spreading this to people. And again, for me, it's just another indicator and another showing an example of how ill-equipped we have been during this whole thing. That it's nice that anyone is getting tested. I know, of course, there are more people deserving of it, and that's something for the government to deal with. But it just sort of reiterates how few people have been tested, how much that testing is so important in terms of spreading and reducing the spread and stopping these sorts of things. So I suppose in a way, the 7 people that were tested positive the first time, the 4 people the second time, it's good that they know about it at least and can isolate in the way that they've been told to.
I mean, the most important test, like I was saying, the most important test in this entire probable thing was probably Mikel Arteta testing positive in back just before that round of fixtures. Because if that round of fixtures had gone through, you wouldn't know what would have happened. That many people packed into football grounds.
Yeah, so very important. And just a slight change of tone before we go, from Juho99 here. Wonder if Andreas Longshot will start to go in, considering there's no crowds to aim at anymore, which is the assumption that is what he was aiming at this whole time.
No, because I've always held that I reckon Pereira scores loads of them in training, which is what gets him into the team in the first place.
He must do.
So if it's the closer to a training match it is, maybe that brings out the best Pereira, and maybe he just starts banging in 40-yard screams all the time. So
yeah. Exactly, potentially. Right, that's going to be all from us today. That was a fun podcast, that wasn't it? Looking forward to things, a bit of excitement going on there. Thank you very much for joining us both, lads, and thank you very much for joining us at home. And again, just to reiterate, everything that's going on at the moment, we're not trying to shy away from anything. We're not trying to sort of pretend that things aren't happening. We support the protests and everything that are going on at the moment. Again, if you want to donate and you don't have any money, you don't have any way to help financially, there's a video called Stream to Donate by Zoe Amira, which all the proceeds from the ad revenue are going towards different causes to help with protests and help with injustices that are going on surrounding the current problem. So, I say current problem, long-standing problem. So thank you very much again for joining us, lads. Thanks for joining us at home. We'll be back in the morning for a news video. See you in a bit.